Racism will be here forever. It will never change. Because of the fact the old Southern white men taught their children taught their children. And some of them didn't because they didn't believe in it. But the majority in the South, they believed it. And I don't care if you got a good white friend. Now, you probably ran into some nice white girlfriends or something. They'll laugh and talk with you, and all of a sudden, it will slip. They will say something out of order.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video is about a harsh reality, right? Racism in America, which isn't going anywhere anytime soon, right? Someone in one of the clips you're about to see makes mention that she thinks that racism could be ingrained in white people's DNA, and I wouldn't put it that way, right? Rather, I would say that it's ingrained in the culture, right? In the institutions, in the history, and, in the power structures. But you guys can let me know what you think about it when we get to that video, because she has a little explanation for why she thinks that it could be ingrained in their DNA. But, let's keep watching, right? Let's watch the clips and we're back with some commentary. Credit goes to all original creators. Thank you so much for tapping in when you saw this. Quick disclaimer, this video is not to incite hate or violence of any kind. It's just for education and commentary purposes under section 107 of the Fair Use Act. But yeah, let's watch and we'll be back with some commentary.
This is why I feel like racism is ingrained into someone's DNA, mind, body, and spirit. I used to work as a CNA, right? And I had a lot of older patients who they had dementia, Alzheimer's, a lot of memory loss. They couldn't remember their name. They couldn't remember their child's name. They couldn't remember their own children or their family members. But they remembered that they didn't like no black people, though. I've seen patients lose all memory. I'm talking about all memory. But they knew they didn't like no blacks. They knew they didn't like no Asians. They knew they didn't like no Native Americans. They knew that they didn't like anybody who wasn't a white American. But they couldn't remember their children's name.
I don't think a lot of people actually realize just how deeply ingrained racism is in everyday life. And the way I really clocked this was through the simple action of taking a receipt. So just stay with me now, okay? Growing up, I was always told to take a receipt whenever we went shopping. I had no clue why this was the case, but I just always did it. Same thing applies to most of my black friends. We'd go shopping, we'd all take receipts. And it got to the point where one of our white friends, this was like in secondary school days, was now asking us, oh, why exactly do you always take a receipt? And I had no clue. I just said my parents always told me to do it. That was the same case for my black friends as well. I'm not saying it's a universal thing, but that's just my personal experience, right? And it wasn't until recently when I clocked that the reason why our parents always told us to take receipts was because of racial profiling. People from minority backgrounds, especially black people, are very likely to be racially profiled as thieves, as people spreading chaos, as all this kind of stuff. So the act of us taking a receipt was our ability to say, no, everything that we have bought is something that we paid for. We are not thieves. We're not causing chaos, etc. And it protected us. It protected us from attacks by store owners, police, security forces, etc. Right? But what I really want to focus on is the fact that in the most minute actions of everyday life, black people are constantly in a state where they are self-policing and self-critiquing themselves. We are constantly vigilant, constantly scared, constantly thinking of how our actions may be perceived in a manner that is, wrong or violent or in conflict with the law and will then put us into trouble. That is how racism affects people on a daily basis. Black people are not able to be truly free in today's society because they are constantly policing themselves, policing how they act, what they say, how they move. The moment a black person brings up any sort of, conversations on these plantain topics, it's one observations. It's like, obviously, I would laugh at these jokes. I'm not going to claim I've not laughed at these jokes, but the fact of the matter is that we ourselves police ourselves to try and fit into this view of society that we think is ideal. Even when we go to the store, we're constantly thinking, oh, do you think I'm a thief? Do you think I'm this? Do you think I'm that? I will have to take a receipt to prove that we are not this thing, right? Other people do not have these same experiences. And that is why I feel like racism is something that's going to take a very long time to overcome, because if we are living in a society where people are just constantly in a position of self-policing, self-critiquing themselves, that isn't just going to fade away overnight. It's just going to pass away after the revolution. It's something that will take several generations to overcome because the scars of racism are intergenerational in nature. And those scars will not be healed overnight, or over a few months, over a few years. It'll take generations to heal them.
I grew up in a place that was predominantly white. And growing up in a community like that, and there were nuances that I never really acknowledged, became a part of my everyday life because of where I grew up and where I was raised. I remember being young and going into like a grocery store or a convenience store, and my mom would tell me to take my hands out of my pocket. And I would just think it's because she wants me to be ready to grab whatever she's handing me to put in the cart or to hold for her. But it was because she didn't want me to be targeted, racially profiled, as stealing something that she knows I wasn't going to steal. And so I didn't realize it as I was growing up until I got to like adolescence, but I was like, oh shoot, yeah, this is what I do now. I go into stores, and when I go in the store, I take my hand out of my pocket and I shop and I get my things and I make sure there's a clear, visible hand here that you could see that's not taking anything from anything that belongs to you. And I think it's trauma. You think it's trauma. Is it trauma? I don't know, because it's a part of my life so much that it feels normal, but it shouldn't be normal. And that's what I'm realizing now. It's like I'm turning 40 soon, and I still do that. To this day. I was in the store, and when I walked in, it's cold. It's cold. I'm in LA, and it's cold. So I know if you live, and I'm from the Northwest when I grew up, so it was always cold, but I had to put my hands in my pocket. Even though I was trying to warm up, I still put my hands out of my pocket. And I was doing that, and I realized I'm almost 40 and I'm still doing that. Making sure the clerk knows, the employees know, I'm not here to steal anything. And that's something that's so crazy. I'm not sure if you have ever experienced that, please let me know. I want to know how many people have been raised this way, because it's something that I definitely did not really grasp is now a part of my everyday life. 30 plus years in the game of being taught this. And we all know why. It's because, the stigma of race and crime, which we all know is propaganda. It's a myth. Black people do not commit more crime than white people if you have a control for social economic status. And people just don't realize that.
When I go to the grocery store and I go to the self-checkout, because I'm a person of color, for whatever reason, the people who are working at the store, they feel the need to be extreme about making sure that I pay or that a person of color pays. And this woman, she walked up to me and she said, "Did you pay for this? Did you pay for that?" And she's kind of like going through the bag area and just really being extreme about it. And I told her, I said, "I know I'm Black, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. I paid for my stuff." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." But I didn't see her doing that with anyone else. And everyone else around me was white. And unfortunately, this is something that, people of color go through all the time. I have white friends, and I know that they don't go through the things that people of color or the so-called Blacks go through. And it's unfortunate, and it gets old. We're supposed to be living in the so-called United States of America. We should be uniting together because the governing entities, they want to keep us separated. They don't want us to unite because we have more power when we stand together. But meanwhile, people are trying to figure out, oh, are you stealing anything or whatever? But then you have people that are not Black that steal all the time. But how would you know if you're worried about the person that's Black all the time? So it's just really unfortunate that this still goes on in our country, considering the racial injustice and the climate of things today in our world. and it's getting really, really old. And I just, even if I don't want to believe that this is happening, this happens. I remember I was going to a park to take pictures with a friend who was white, and this man stopped me at the gate. He was a white man, and he questioned me about my intentions, about what I was doing at the park. And I warned my friend, I'm like, oh, this guy, he's probably going to question you. And that didn't happen. She went in with no problems, no questions asked. But I couldn't help but to consider maybe the reason why I was questioned was because of the color of my skin. Unfortunately, these things go on. It's not in my head. It's not in a Black person's head. You know, sometimes it's even energy that we feel or experience coming towards us that is racist energy. It can be racist looks that we get. You know, we're all spirit beings having a natural experience, so we are sensitive to people's energy. And the fact that we are overlooked or looked down upon without even words, we can internalize that energy. And so there should be an awareness of that, of the racial energy that you're carrying, and whether or not you're looking down on somebody because of the color of their skin or for whatever reason. We need to unite. If they can keep us divided, then we would never be able to succeed, because a kingdom divided against itself can't stand. And that's what the Bible says. So let's join together. If you sit on a toilet just like any person of color, then no one is better. No one is better. We all have to use the bathroom. We all have to, you know, do human things. And that's the commonality. So I just think it's really unfortunate. But I know that God sees all, and he's going to redeem us, his people. He's going to redeem all of the loss and all of the mistreatment, all of the injustice. He sees all, and he hasn't forgotten. And so he's going to vindicate us for all of those who have mistreated us.
Stop explaining racism to white people, at least not for free. That's what we're gonna stop doing in 2025. Like, when a white person says something racist and you call it out, just give them a book recommendation and keep it pushing. Because the first thing they're gonna do is deny it, because they don't believe they're capable of racism. I don't have a racist bone in my body. I have Black friends, I have Black children, I have a Black husband. So you first have to circumvent their defensiveness, their fragility, if you will, and try to convince them that what they did or said was in fact racist. That's step one. Then they're gonna ask why, how is it possible? Then you have to dip into the archives in your brain, filter through every single past experience, every single academic article you've read, the anti-racist literature you've explored, and you try to reframe it and prepackage it in a way that will help them to understand. So you have to kind of like water it down a bit. And even then, they're still probably going to argue with you. And over the past year of burnout I've experienced from spending the previous 4 or 5 years creating content just like that, trying my best to educate white people, understanding like, if you can't beat them, join them. If I can't escape whiteness, then I might as well try to educate as many people as possible. Try to help them introspect and reflect, essentially to help them understand the complex topography of racism, to convince them that white supremacy is embedded in every single aspect of every single part of our lives. And just because you think you're a good person doesn't mean that you are not going to be perpetuating that. I even went as far as to say that all white people are racist, and the internet exploded. And regardless of the validity of that statement, it was not something people were prepared to hear. It's still something that people aren't prepared to hear. White people really be thinking that racism equals little white hats, and then if they don't have a little white hat, then that means that they're not racist. Like, simple as that. I realized that some of the things I was saying to try to educate white people was actually doing more harm than good, in my opinion. Like creating a list of 5 things white people say that are racist and they don't even know. I resent the fact that it took me so long to figure this out, but so many white people believe that an academic understanding of racism is like the goal. Like if they at least have an understanding of their power and privilege, that's pretty much all they can do. They believe that that is an action-based approach. And the reason that's harmful, and I'll give an example, it's similar to when I was first starting to deconstruct my understanding
understanding of gender. This was before I realized I was genderqueer and I switched up my pronouns, whatever. I learned not to assume someone's gender, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to use they, them pronouns for anybody if I don't know their pronouns. So when I would see someone, I would perceive someone, I would automatically go into they, them, right? I was completely pretending that I didn't still perceive that person as either a boy or a girl. So I essentially stunted my ability to truly deconstruct gender internally. I spent the first few months telling myself what I'm supposed to think and what I'm supposed to say instead of actually addressing how I genuinely truly feel and why. That's what happens with a lot of white people when it comes to this anti-racism education. They learn what they're not supposed to say, what they're not supposed to think, because they don't want to be perceived as a bad person. They don't want other people to call them racist. It's just like plastering a hole in the wall. You don't actually ever have to address the issue with the infrastructure. You just got to cover the hole so it looks pretty on the outside. That's what a lot of white people be doing. So why are you for free giving out this labor to white people to just be consumed and left with nothing? This applies to any context, whether it be in person or online. Me, especially online, like I've never made a fucking cent from any of my videos because in Canada there's no creator fund. We get it. American creators, maybe y'all have been making money off of it, and that's amazing, as you should. But I'm telling you, if you're doing this for free, stop. Give them a book recommendation and see what happens, because I guarantee more often than not, they're probably not even going to go look up the book afterward. Once you witness the percentage of people who will actually go and seek out that resource so they can educate themselves, you'll shift your perspective on how useful it is to educate white people about racism for free.
I wonder why black people don't speak up when we experience racism. Spoiler alert, it's not because we're shy. It's because somehow we always get punished for telling the truth. Wild. That part. Here's the thing. We're told to speak out. Every time there's an issue, someone always says, just say something. But when we do, suddenly we're too angry or too sensitive. Because apparently, white discomfort is way more important than our basic human rights. Weird how that works, right? Because here's the truth. Every time we speak up, we risk our jobs, our safety, our mental health, and don't even get me started on the emotional labour of it all. And for what? For white people to act shocked or oppressed when they're called out? Nah. So when we stop explaining, when we stop teaching, suddenly it's, why are you so angry? Make it make sense. Black people are done teaching. We've been explaining this for decades. Now it's your turn to listen, learn, and act.
It is beyond problematic to me that I can't even go to the hospital without hearing racial slurs. So last night I had the great experience of spending the night in my favorite place, the hospital. I'm sitting in the waiting room, there's me, and there's a group of other people, but the only people with this skin color are me and the security guard. Again, I'm minding my own business, trying to get some sleep, trying to not hate the fact that I'm there. And this guy walks in. We smelled him before we saw him. And he came in loud saying that his wife had been waiting 5 hours for an ultrasound, which, where is your wife? Is she back there? Why isn't she with you? She's been waiting 5 hours. I'm very confused. So again, whatever, I'm trying to get some sleep. He comes over to where I'm sitting and this other group is sitting. We have space in between us because no one wants to be there. And no one wants to be sitting like just right up next to anyone, especially someone that smells like him. But he comes up and he's like, is anyone sitting here? And the thing that's between me and the other girl. And I'm like, no. And he sits there. So immediately all of us disperse because, again, he is acting very strange and he smells very strange. So I moved 3 seats down to like another couch, whatever, and the other people moved all the way down. That should be a hint, bro, right there. He keeps moving around. He decides that he's going to go to the front couch, move it, slide it so that no one can walk through, use the trash can as his little footrest ottoman, and plug his phone into the outlet behind that trash can. Once again, the only people of this skin color are me and the security guard. The security guard comes over. He's like, no, man, you can't do that. Moves the couch back, moves the trash can back, and makes the guy unplug his phone. So once again, he wants to come sit near us. So he sat in the chair next to me. So again, I move another 3 seats down. His general presence was annoying me, but I had closed my eyes and I was like, okay, like just no. And all of a sudden I hear, I'm not effing, and it wasn't effing, but I try to keep this clean. He goes, I'm not effing scared of you, hard inward with an R. I opened my eyes and sat, I forgot any pain, I forgot any sleepiness, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the exact face the exact look I had on my face, because the people that were next to me, they're looking, on the other side, they're looking at me, and I'm like, so he continues this. He's not whispering, but he's not yelling. So it's clear what he's saying to us. And so, because at first I thought he was talking to me, and I'm like, and then he keeps going, I'm not afraid to fight you, effing hard inward, talking about the security guard. And then he keeps going. Every single sentence is you effing hard inward with an R. He at least said it 4 times. At least 4 times. Right next to me. I got up. I went to the security guard. I'm like, did you hear this, man? Do you hear what he's saying about you? And he was like, yeah, he's mad that I made him unplug his phone. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. Like, well, I don't even want to be here, but I'm not listening to this. A nurse came up and he was like, what's going on? And I told him, and he was like, oh my God. And then, another nurse came out and she collected him. So when the second nurse came out, I moved yet again to get even farther away from this man, because in my head, I either wanted to punch him, I wanted to go off on him, but again, I'm trying to keep myself calm. But she comes out and she's like, is this your stuff? Because he had sat by us and then left his stuff in the other chair. But she was like, is this your stuff? And he's like, can I ask you a question since you want to ask me a question? And she was like, no, it's just, is this your stuff? And he was like, yeah. And she was like, you're being disruptive to our other patients that are in here. So if you do not stop what you're saying and making them uncomfortable, then we will have to ask you to leave. And he was like, okay, now can I go question for question with you since you just asked me a question? And she was like, no, and walked away. And then he went to his stuff and he was like, after that attitude, I don't feel comfortable being here. Bro, do you think what you were saying made me comfortable to be there? I wasn't comfortable being there in the first place. I didn't want to be there. It was not on my agenda to be there last night, so I didn't want to be there, and I definitely did not want to hear come out of your racist mouth the hard N-word at least 4 or 5 times. That's crazy. But he ended up leaving. But I was still just really pissed because I'm like, is this what's happening now? Like, is this what's happening? Like, I know I've experienced, stuff, but like, you were not afraid at all to drop those 4 or 5 hard N-words with an R. You were not at all in the least bit scared that something would happen. Nothing. You were just like, I don't care if he was on meth. I don't care if he was drunk. I don't care if he was high on anything. That just means the racism came out more easily, because there's no reason you should feel that comfortable dropping those slurs because a security guard asked you to unplug your phone and not block the hallway. But one thing I will say, though, is really nice. After that happened, the first nurse that came out to ask me what was going on came and took me to the back, and the other nurses were like talking about the situation, and they actually apologized to me and said they were sorry that happened, which it isn't their fault. But I was just like, I held myself together and thank you for speaking up or whatever. And they gave me a little nicer room with an actual bed and everything, so that while I was waiting I could actually like chill. So I do appreciate that about hospital staff, and it pretty much sucks that they have to deal with that type of stuff too, probably every night.
Here's the thing, right? Racism isn't biological, but it is generational, right? It's taught, it's normalized, it's inherited, it's passed down through families, through schools, through laws, through silence, right? And because America was literally built on it, the system keeps recreating itself unless someone actively disrupts it. And statistically, white people will become a minority in America soon. And honestly, that's why so many people are panicking. So many white people are panicking, right? They know that once they're no longer the majority, they can't hide behind the same power structures anymore. But until the US confronts the racism built into its foundation, this is, going to be a permanent problem, right? Not a temporary glitch. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. Credit goes to all original creators. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more information, more stories like this that you don't get to see on the news. And as usual, I'll see you on my next one. Bye.